They cheered as blood stained the sand, as men and beasts were torn apart under the burning Roman sun. An empire that once spoke of law and order revealed its true heart in the arena where cruelty became a celebration. The Colosseum rose like a stone crown dazzling from afar, yet within its walls, the roar of the crowd merged with screams of the condemned. Every sound became a hymn to violence. Gladiators stepped into the sand not as men, but as offerings. Most were slaves or prisoners forced to fight until their bodies broke. Each strike of the sword echoed with despair and fleeting hope. Wild beasts were starved to the edge of madness before being unleashed. Lions and leopards pounced with brutal hunger tearing into human flesh while thousands of eyes drank in every movement. Sometimes the spectacle went further. Engineers flooded the arena to create seas where prisoners drowned in mock battles that twisted history into nightmare. The empire turned cruelty into art and death into ritual. These games were not simply entertainment. They were instruments of power. The emperor sat in silence, a single gesture enough to seal the fate of those begging for life. For the Romans, horror was not hidden in shadows. It stood in daylight for all to see. Every execution became theater, every scream a chorus. Every body left lifeless on the sand was a reminder that the empire thrived on control through fear. And still the people returned day after day. Their voices rose in unison, exalting the very cruelty that defined their world. Stay with this story until the end, to see how deep Rome descended into obsession with death and spectacle. Subscribe now so you will never miss the secrets that history tried to silence. The Empire of Rome did not rise from dust without a foundation. It was built on discipline, conquest, and the belief that strength must be displayed before all eyes. At the center of this belief stood the games, and behind the games stood the men who shaped them. The emperors of Rome learned early that violence was more than an outlet for the masses. It was a weapon of control. From the first generations, rulers understood that bread and spectacle could silence discontent. Citizens who might have questioned taxes or corruption were drawn instead to the promise of blood in the arena. A seat beneath the blazing sun became a privilege. The poorest man could sit in the same stands as a senator and feel the thrill of power in his chest as life and death played out below. The Colosseum was more than stone. It was a political instrument disguised as entertainment. Gladiators embodied the paradox of Roman ideals. They were despised as slaves, yet adored as symbols of courage. They trained in barracks that were prisons of sweat and dust, their lives regulated by strict discipline. Many were criminals condemned to fight until death erased their debt. Others were prisoners of war brought from distant lands to show that Rome had conquered not only territories, but also the bodies of men. Once in the arena, they became stories in motion. A slave could, for a brief instant, be hailed as a hero if his bravery struck the hearts of the crowd. Yet every triumph carried a shadow. Few gladiators lived long enough to know freedom. The roar of approval was fleeting, and once the fight ended, chains returned. The people were not blind to this. They understood that courage could be exalted and erased in the same breath. Their fascination came from that cruel tension. The arena mirrored life in the empire, where glory and ruin stood side by side. Animals too were brought from every corner of the world. Elephants from Africa, tigers from the east, bears from the forests of Europe. Their presence was not only to terrify, but also to declare that Rome had the power to command nature itself. When these beasts were set loose upon men, the audience saw not only a fight, but also a reminder of Rome's global reach. Every roar was a symbol of conquest. Every death was a display of dominion. And at the highest seat sat the emperor. His face was calm, his hand steady, his silence heavier than steel. With the smallest movement he could save or destroy, showing that his authority extended beyond law and into the very breath of men. For the spectators, his presence turned each event into more than a game. It became a sermon of power. The crowd saw him as both arbiter and godlike figure, capable of granting mercy or condemning without a word. This balance of fear and fascination defined Roman society. The games shaped not only the afternoons of citizens but the psychology of the empire itself. Children grew up hearing tales of heroic last stands. Women whispered prayers as beasts tore through the condemned. Men shouted for blood with fists raised high. Each moment in the arena seeped into the fabric of daily life, teaching that strength was survival and mercy was rare. Thus, the stage was set. Rome had created a culture where cruelty was normal and spectacle was sacred. The Colosseum was no longer simply an amphitheater. It was the beating heart of an empire that believed control came not through kindness, but through fear. At the height of Roman power, the arena no longer served as a place for simple contests. It became the living theater of the empire, where spectacle was refined into an art form. The games expanded into vast festivals lasting many days, each sequence designed to astonish and overwhelm. Crowds poured into the Colosseum to witness events that surpassed imagination. Naval battles were staged within walls of stone. The arena flooded until ships clashed and prisoners drowned before thousands of eyes. Every detail displayed the limitless reach of Rome. And the people believed themselves part of something greater than life itself. It was during this golden age of spectacle that emperors discovered how to elevate themselves beyond politics. Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, stepped down from the imperial throne to enter the arena in armor. He fought not as a ruler, but as a gladiator, demanding the crowd cheer him as champion. His vanity turned blood into theater of power. To the citizens, it was both terrifying and enthralling. The emperor who held their fate in silence also craved the intoxication of applause. Rome had never seen its ruler so exposed, and yet his actions reinforced the dangerous truth that violence was now the very pulse of the state. Among the fighters who filled the sands, there were names that endured in whispers. Flamma, a gladiator from distant Syria, fought more than 30 times. His victories earned him the wooden sword that symbolized freedom, yet he rejected it. Time and again, he chose to remain within the blood-stained walls. To the Romans, his decision seemed divine. Here was a man so consumed by the allure of glory that liberty itself could not tempt him. He became a symbol of courage, twisted into obsession, and the crowd adored him for it. Marcus Attilius was another figure who captured hearts. Unlike most, he was not condemned nor enslaved. He was a free man who entered the arena by choice. His victories over seasoned veterans shocked the people, proving that even citizens could be seduced by the call of blood. For the Romans, his story embodied the paradox of their world. Freedom did not shield one from the spell of spectacle. Even a man with no chains might surrender to the glory of combat. The animals magnified the wonder and terror. Lions leapt from hidden gates, elephants thundered across the sand, and leopards lunged at trembling captives. Each beast brought from distant provinces carried the message that Rome ruled not only men, but nature itself. The crowd shuddered at their strength, yet swelled with pride that such creatures now served the empire. Every roar was both fear and triumph woven together. Gladiators rose to the status of legends. Their names were carved into gossip, painted on walls, sung in taverns, Rivalries became sagas that unfolded over months and years. Friendships formed only to be shattered when fate demanded one life for the crowd's delight. Betrayals on the sand echoed louder than any play. Acts of mercy drew gasps and tears. Nothing was left to chance. Each moment was a carefully balanced storm of fear and admiration. Above it all sat the emperor. His presence transformed the games into sacred rituals of authority. One nod could redeem, one silence could condemn. To the people, every heartbeat in the arena reflected the will of the man who ruled them. For Rome, power and spectacle were inseparable. The Colosseum was no longer stone and sand. It was the stage upon which empire itself declared its mastery of life, death, and the human soul. The arena was not only a place of violence, it was a mirror that reflected the deepest contradictions of human nature. Every Roman who stepped into the stands became part of a grand experiment in emotion. They were not simply witnesses. They were participants in a ritual where fascination with death collided with admiration for courage. The sand beneath the sun was a stage where the line between honor and horror blurred until it could no longer be seen. The audience did not arrive only to watch blood. They arrived to feel something that ordinary life could not give. The rhythm of anticipation and release pulled their hearts in directions they could not resist. A condemned man who stood trembling before a beast inspired fear. Yet if he lifted his sword and fought with courage, admiration surged through the crowd. In that moment, the criminal became a hero. The same man who would be forgotten in chains was exalted for his defiance. This was the cruel genius of the games. They allowed the people to feel compassion and cruelty in the same breath. The attraction lay in this duality. To see a man rise above despair gave the illusion of hope, yet to watch him fall satisfied a hunger for dominance. Both emotions were intoxicating. Romans left the arena feeling purged of weakness, convinced they had confronted life and death without facing danger themselves. The spectacle provided a catharsis that no temple or philosophy could match. It was theater of the body, where courage and terror performed side by side. Some spectators projected their own struggles onto the fighters. A soldier who had faced fear in battle could see himself in the gladiator standing alone against impossible odds. A mother might watch a captive beg for mercy and feel a shiver of recognition for the fragility of her own children. Others surrendered fully to darker desires. They did not seek empathy. They sought the thrill of watching flesh torn and life extinguished, convinced that such cruelty reminded them of their own survival. The arena allowed all these impulses to coexist without shame. The tension was heightened by the unpredictability of each encounter. No one could know whether a fighter would endure another strike, whether a beast would falter or devour, whether mercy would be granted or denied. This uncertainty kept the crowd on edge, their emotions shifting between hope and despair. Suspense was as addictive as blood. Every pause, every breath, every sudden roar was a note in a symphony of anticipation. Philosophers of the time struggled to explain this paradox. Some condemned the games as corruption of the soul, while others argued that they revealed the essence of courage. Yet even critics could not deny that the arena held a power that surpassed reason. It tapped into the primal core of humanity. To be Roman was to live in the shadow of death, and the games offered a way to face that shadow directly. The people left the Colosseum changed. They carried stories of bravery, betrayal, mercy, and despair. These tales were retold at markets and banquets, shaping the moral imagination of the empire. A single act of defiance could echo for generations, while a moment of terror became a warning whispered in families. The arena fed the collective memory, imprinting lessons of courage and cruelty into the identity of Rome itself. Thus, the fascination of the games was never only in the clash of steel or the roar of beasts. It was in the turmoil of the human heart. The spectators were drawn into a world where morality lost its shape, where admiration and horror lived together, where every cheer concealed a trace of guilt and every tear carried a thrill of excitement. This was the depth of Rome's obsession. It was not simply the death of men, it was the exposure of the soul. The arena was not only the heartbeat of Rome, it was the throne room without walls, where emperors displayed authority more vividly than in any senate hall. Within those stone arches, power was not argued but performed. The presence of the ruler transformed every game into a demonstration of sovereignty. The crowd looked not only at the fighters or the beasts, they looked at the man who sat above them all, cloaked in purple, whose stillness could weigh more heavily than 1,000 swords. The emperor understood that the games offered more than distraction. They were instruments of loyalty. By granting free spectacles, he turned citizens into dependents who saw his generosity as their lifeline. A seat in the Colosseum became a gift from the throne. Every loaf of bread distributed alongside the entertainment carried his image in the minds of the people. The empire taught its citizens that survival and pleasure were bound to imperial favor. Gratitude was manufactured in the roar of the crowd. Yet beneath the generosity lay calculation. The games were staged to remind the audience of their place. When criminals or rebels were paraded before beasts, the people saw what happened to those who defied order. When lavish battles were reenacted, they were reminded of victories won under imperial banners. The emperor did not need speeches. The spectacle spoke with greater force than words ever could. Fear was folded into fascination, until obedience seemed natural. The spectacle also tightened control over the elite. Senators who watched from the marble tiers understood that the crowd belonged to the ruler. Any opposition risked being drowned in a sea of voices loyal to the man who gave them blood and bread. In the arena, the emperor was not surrounded by debate. He was surrounded by a living chorus that affirmed his supremacy. Every cheer became an oath of submission. Some rulers mastered the balance with subtlety. They allowed moments of mercy to display their clemency, then shifted swiftly to executions that reinforced their dominance. Others indulged in excess, turning the games into personal stages where vanity and cruelty merged. In both cases, the lesson was the same. Life and death were controlled by one hand. No man in the arena was greater than the one who watched from above. The architecture itself emphasized this truth. The emperor's seat was positioned so that every eye could turn to him in moments of decision. A gesture of the arm or a brief silence before a verdict bound the audience into complicity. The people did not simply observe justice. They shared in the drama of choosing who would live and who would fall. By shaping their emotions, the emperor made them accomplices in his rule. Over time, the games became inseparable from imperial identity. A weak ruler who failed to provide spectacle risked losing the loyalty of the masses. A ruler who offered extravagance secured adoration, though at the cost of treasure and stability. The Colosseum thus became a stage where politics, theater, and terror combined into a single language. Authority was performed in every clash and in every scream. The people left not only entertained, but reminded of the reach of power. The arena revealed the genius and the peril of Roman rule. By weaving fear into spectacle, emperors bound the empire together under the illusion of unity. Yet beneath that unity lay dependence and silence. The games kept the people enthralled, but they also kept them subdued. Each roar that rose from the stands carried both admiration and submission. In this way, the Colosseum became the most enduring symbol of imperial power, a monument not only to cruelty, but to the mastery of control. The Colosseum still stands in silence, its arches worn by centuries, its stones carrying the memory of voices long vanished. Time has emptied its seats, yet the structure breathes with echoes of what once filled it. For travelers who step inside today, the air carries weight. It is not only the ruin of an amphitheater, it is a reminder that Rome built monuments not only of stone but of spectacle. The games are gone, but their presence lingers in the imagination of humanity. They reveal that fascination with violence is not confined to a single age. The hunger for spectacle, the allure of danger, the admiration for courage and the indulgence in cruelty are threads that continue to weave through history. The Colosseum is a scar left open, reminding us that civilizations often display their greatness and their corruption in the same breath. What remains most haunting is not the death that occurred there, but the reflection of the audience itself. The men and women who cheered were not demons. They were citizens, mothers and fathers, soldiers and merchants. They carried within them the same mixture of empathy and brutality that lies within us. The arena forced them to face it openly. The ruin now forces us to remember that truth. The legacy of the games is therefore not only a story of Rome, it is a story of humankind. Each culture builds its stages. Each age finds its spectacles. The question is always what those spectacles reveal about the values we choose to celebrate. Rome chose to exalt strength and domination, and in doing so, it bound cruelty into the identity of an empire. The silence of the Colosseum today asks whether we have truly learned from it. The stones are mute, yet they still accuse. They remind us that entertainment can be a mask for control, that applause can silence conscience, that fascination can blind judgment. In every broken column lies the memory of a society that believed itself eternal. Yet the echoes of its cruelty remain louder than the triumphs of its armies. The Colosseum stands as both monument and warning, a mirror of what humanity is capable of becoming when power and pleasure hold hands. If this journey through the shadows of Rome has stirred something in you, let the story continue beyond this moment. Stay with us as we uncover more secrets hidden in the blood and silence of history. Subscribe now to our channel so you will not miss the truths that still lie buried in the ruins of time.